The lottery is this strange intersection of politics, economics, and psychology. It's always just been this thing that exists. You'd hear news stories from time to time about a certain jackpot reaching a ridiculous amount of money.
With an estimated $1.9 billion up for grabs tonight, Americans nationwide are testing their luck.
Probably buy an island for the family.
You walk into a gas station and you'll see the branding and the opportunities to indulge in the game. If you don't play the lottery, it just sort of exists as this background noise. But if you do, it could feel like you're one ticket out of poverty. The thing is, though, behind all the colorful branding and the billion-dollar buzz is a system that doesn't work the way people think it does. The lottery sells dreams, not to just anyone, but to the people most desperate for one.
It's a fool's game, but some fool will win it eventually.
Lower income residents are far more likely to shell out money for lottery tickets than wealthier people are. In fact, the lowest income households spend an average of $412 per year on lottery tickets, which is more than 4 times what the highest income households spend. When you think about it, this makes sense. Wealthy people don't need to gamble to generate more wealth. They already have wealth. Sure, they'll take some risks, but once you already have money, the path to making more becomes a lot easier. Plus, you can do so with way better odds than the lottery. The odds of winning the Powerball jackpot are 1 in 292 million. More specifically, 1 in 292,201,338, according to Powerball. And yet, the lottery is everywhere. In the US, only 5 states don't have a state-run lottery: Alabama, Utah, Nevada, Hawaii, and Alaska. Alabama and Utah cite religious reasons. Nevada, home to Las Vegas, is influenced heavily by casino lobbying, which doesn't want the competition. Hawaii and Alaska haven't felt the same pressure to add the lottery due to their geographical isolation. But the other 45 states, they all operate some version of a lottery. And in 2023, total US lottery sales amounted to over $113 billion.
That's more than concerts, movies, books, and streaming services combined.
About 60 cents of every dollar spent goes back to players as winnings. But that number is a bit misleading, because it doesn't mean that all players are getting a fair shake. It means a few people win big, even more win small, and the vast majority walk away with losses. Lottery systems rely on this imbalance. A massive base of consistent losers funding rare winners and guaranteed state profits. That remaining 40% goes towards things like administrative costs, advertising, and the portion the state keeps as profit. By profit, I mean the money that's left after those expenses, which gets funneled into things like education or infrastructure. The final share ends up being about 30% of total lottery revenue. Now, how much impact that money has varies widely by state. Overall, for the 45 states, it accounts for 2.1% of total state taxes collected. However, for instance, in Rhode Island and South Dakota, lottery proceeds account for over 7% of the state's total tax revenue. But in many other states like Colorado, Oklahoma, Montana, etc., this number is less than 1%. The thing is, though, in many cases, that money doesn't actually add to public funding, it just replaces what would have come from traditional taxes. It essentially is a reallocation of funds, and it can be very difficult to see how it all breaks down, especially state by state. A study done in North Carolina by the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, examined data on this very thing, and I think they summed it up pretty well. Quote, it concluded that increasing lottery sales were not correlated with increases in funding for the original legislatively mandated programs. In other words, lottery money didn't boost education funding, it just gave the government more room to shift things around behind the scenes. And taxes are obviously a contentious topic, no matter where you land politically. But I find the lottery to be one of the more fascinating and frankly more deceptive forms of taxation in the US. Because instead of asking the people who have more to give, like wealthy families and corporations, politicians get to say, look, even though this is gambling, we're funding schools with all of this money, all while shifting the burden onto the people who are least able to afford it. And I know critics will push back and say this is an optional form of taxation. And yes, I agree. But we can't ignore the sophisticated psychology behind it either. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, when every financial option feels out of reach, that $5 scratch ticket feels like a chance you might not otherwise feel like is out there for you. The lottery works because people are desperate, and desperation is easy to monetize.
How's business for the lottery?
As good as it's ever been.
Jonathan Cohen's history of the American lottery, For a Dollar and a Dream, is a story of misplaced hope.
You know, there's this old phrase that a lottery is a stupid tax or a tax on people who are bad at math. And I think that's totally unfair. I think a lot of lottery players sort of reason that they don't have a chance, maybe not even at wealth, at sort of financial stability. And the lottery, even if it's 1 in 292.2 million, offers some chance. Mathematically irrational, but sort of culturally, socially, politically, economically makes total sense.
Can't win if you don't play.
That's right, and somebody's gotta win, it might as well be you.
In 2021, there were 11 states where lottery revenues actually exceeded revenues from corporate taxes. As you can probably imagine, critics have argued that this shift amounts to a regressive tax, where lower income residents are essentially paying more into the system than wealthy corporations. And ironically, if you're lucky enough to win a hefty prize from the lottery, you'll still owe income taxes on that gain. So when people keep buying tickets and no one wins, the jackpot gets bigger and bigger. But the thing here is that just because the prize grows doesn't mean more people win. It just means more people are losing, and the state is making even more money off that loss. And in some cases, states actively adjust the rules to optimize just how much they can extract. Take Pennsylvania, for example. For years, the state required the lottery to maintain a minimum 20% profit margin on traditional games, meaning at least 20 cents of every dollar sold had to go to state programs. But in 2025, lawmakers passed a bill allowing that margin to drop as low as 10%. Why would they lower their own profit margin, you might be wondering? Because it lets them pay out more in prizes to lure people into buying more tickets. The goal is simple: lower the cut per ticket, increase volume, and make more money overall. More big flashy prizes, more tickets sold, and eventually more total revenue for the state. It becomes a volume game. Even if the margin per ticket is smaller, the state wins because it's selling more of them. Now, unlike traditional gambling, the lottery isn't run by shady offshore casinos or flashy Vegas resorts. It's run by your state government, often in partnership with private lottery contractors like Scientific Games or International Game Technology. These companies help design the games, they print the tickets, and they manage the back-end software. For this service, they take a cut of every ticket sold. It's a public-private business built on the backs of people who are hoping to catch a break. Scratch-off games in particular now bring in the bulk of lottery revenue, not the traditional draw games like Powerball or Mega Millions. And that's done by design. Scratch-offs are fast, flashy, and engineered for repeat play. They offer instant gratification, just like a slot machine. They're branded with bright colors, familiar imagery, and names that evoke wealth, luxury, or even excitement. Things like Gold Rush, Millionaire Maker, etc. You scratch, you lose, you buy another. The feedback loop is immediate, and the more immediate the experience, the easier it is to keep going. That's what makes them so profitable, the psychology behind them, which is a very scary thing to think about in my eyes. They're sold in gas stations, grocery stores, corner shops, they're everywhere, but they're overwhelmingly concentrated in low-income neighborhoods. And this makes sense, because the lottery isn't targeting the wealthy, it's targeting the person who's short on rent, but still clings to the chance that a $2 ticket might change everything. And the more you think about it, the more insidious this whole thing becomes, because the lottery is celebrated. It's marketed as this thing that feels very tangible. When they parade a winner around, when they show someone who won, it makes someone think, oh, I can have that too. And states love to promote this with cheerful commercials, catchy slogans, and even billboards. They frame it as a public good, because yeah, some of the revenue goes towards funding education or helping infrastructure get built. But when you peel back the branding, what you find is a system that sells hope to the poor in order to pad public budgets. But I do want to make some points clear, since I am being somewhat critical of this system. I don't blame the people who indulge in this kind of activity. I actually understand it completely. And I'm not trying to tell anyone that they should never buy a lottery ticket. But what I am trying to do is spread some level of awareness about how this business operates, how it preys on some of the most vulnerable people in our society, how the proceeds do go to helping parts of our society, but not generally used in an additional manner, and how the business is only increasing over the years, which I think speaks to the level of desperation so many of us feel, especially in a time where wealth and opportunity are more unevenly distributed than ever. The lottery promises a shot at something better, but more often than not, it just takes from the people who can least afford to lose. And the more desperate things get, the more profitable that becomes. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about wealth inequality in America, well, I covered it in this video here. Please be sure to check it out next. Thanks for watching.